Okay, so you guys going to give me something to do here so I don't feel like I'm doing nothing. Kind of an insurance broker. Basically, I'm waiting for the annual enrollment period to start. That's going to start in October. So there's not much for me to do right now. So I thought we'd go over my newest purchase, which is the Grand Seiko SBGA 283. Look at that beautiful dial. So, I'll start off with the specs. I'll just be a YouTube spec sheet reader for a minute here. For those of you not familiar with this watch, here it goes. So, the case diameter is 39 millimeter. Case thickness is 12.3. You can see it's got that nice camber, the way the lugs are shaped, so it'll wrap around your wrist real nicely there. Case thickness, 12.3 millimeters, like I said. Glass is sapphire. It's got AR coating on the underside, which is nice. Probably one of the more important dimensions as far as how well a watch is going to wear is going to be the lug to lug dimension. So that's from here to here. And on this guy, it's 46.5 millimeter, but with the way that end link sticks out there, you can see it's going to give you a little extra at 49.9 millimeter. The lug width, or the width of the band, is 19 millimeter, and there's no taper down to the clasp. So it's a push button deployant. It's going to be milled on the inside. I'd take that off, but I got to have one hand to sort of operate my camera here. So yeah, I'm not really a professional YouTube watch reviewer. The water resistance is going to be 100 meters, and the movement is obviously spring drive. You can tell just by how well the second hand sweeps. It's got that really smooth sweep of the second hand. There's no stuttering or stopping and starting like you'd see even with an ETA or a Sellita, which I've had, plenty of those as well. Crown is screwed down, and it's also signed. So you can kind of see that there. Got the GS, Grand Seiko logo. And if this looks janky, it is. I'm literally using two bookmarks to hold up my phone. I don't even have a stand for my phone. It's anti-magnetic up to 60 Gauss. Power reserve is 72 hours on that spring drive, which is nice. It's actually more than the new Tudor in-house movement, the MT5602, which is only 70 hours, so a couple hours more. That's basically the meat and potatoes of it. So now at this point, I've sold off a Tudor Black Bay Heritage, the 41 millimeter, an Omega Aquaterra, also 41 millimeter, and the Seiko Sarb 017, which you would know as the Alpinist, the green dial, and also a 39 millimeter Oris Aquis blue dial with a black bezel. Obviously, I didn't need to sell all of those for this one watch, but I've been trying to consolidate my collection lately to be more cohesive and, more importantly, to have watches I really want to wear every day. So I bought a Black Bay 58, which has been basically my grail since they came out in 2018. I ended up with the 41 millimeter because it was cheaper, and I thought, it's a little bit thicker, maybe a little heavier. For a couple hundred less, I'll deal with that. You've probably heard people say it before. Don't compromise on the watch you really want, because at the end of the day, when you go to sell it like I did, you lose money on it, and you have to pay more for the watch you really want, which was, for me, the Black Bay 58. So, there's tons of reviews on that watch that are going to be a lot better quality, so go check those out. There's not too many reviews on this SBGA 283. So let's start off with, how I got here at this point. So for one, I've wanted a Grand Seiko since I started collecting watches in 2018. Okay, that's not necessarily true. Let's start at the beginning. So like I said before, I'm an insurance broker, and really going back to where it started for me was 2016. I'd sold over $1 million in premium. Had a great year. I was the top salesman in the company, and as a reward, the company I worked for They bought me a Rolex Datejust 126200. Retailed right around 6,000, had to pay taxes on it, so I wasn't happy with that. Also, I wasn't into watches at the time. I thought it was really pretentious to basically be walking around with a used Honda Civic on my wrist. So, I used to run a lot, and I always wore cheap Casios and Timex, and that was all I thought I needed. So, long story short, I ended up exchanging that watch basically to get a larger diamond ring for my wife because she'd always wanted one, and no big deal. I didn't care about watches. That was a mistake. Not really a mistake because I regret giving my wife a nice ring, but a mistake in the fact, like just the investment side. I wasn't aware of, because simply I wasn't into watches, that basically the prices on these Rolexes would go up. So after I got into them, a couple years later, I found out that Rolex had appreciated in value, whereas diamonds, they really don't. I don't think, actually most people probably are aware of the marketing of diamonds and how that works. And, large companies like De Beers, they artificially short the market to drive up value, which is kind of ironic because I think most people would make the argument today that that's what Rolex does. So moving the story along a bit here, I'm also cheap. And for me, getting back into watches in 2018, I wanted the most for the least, similar to what I help my clients do with insurance, and what I think most people want out of any consumer product or service. So a few years ago, I thought it was crazy to spend thousands of dollars for a watch, which it really still kind of is. Well, eventually, I bought an Oris Aquis, brand new from Watchbox for around $1,400. After owning everything from Seiko, Orient, San Martin, Steinhardt, even a Neymar, thanks to Jody, It's Just One More Watch. So if you're into watches, I'm sure you guys consume a lot of watch content. That's one of the reviewers that I watch, a couple others. But yeah, he's probably like what I'd say like the Mr. Rogers of watches, the way he reviews everything. He's really fair and balanced as far as the stuff he looks at, but mostly he's looking at the bargain end of the spectrum as far as watches go. So spending $1,400, I got a new Oris Aquis, which sounds like a lot, but it's really kind of, a drop in the bucket compared to the $6,000 Rolex I had, that if I still had now, I could sell for around $8,000. My next big step up was spending over $3,000 on that Tudor Black Bay Heritage, and while I thought it was worth it, I still find it hard to push up to $5,000 or more for a couple reasons. One, being the law of diminishing returns. In short, once you get to a certain amount spent, in this case on watches, the return on your investment, or even intangibles like the enjoyment you get out of it, they're really more difficult to quantify. So really anything over entry-level luxury, you're already kind of getting that diminishing return. For a real-world example, try to sell any watch you own right now that's not a Rolex. You're going to get less money than what you paid for it, and you'll be lucky even if you just break even. So that's, not even taking into account the pound of flesh, sites like eBay and Chrono24 are going to charge you to sell on their platform. So in my watch collecting practice, I try to buy as low as I can and not lose money. And that's why I also tend to buy pre-owned or gray market, because as much as I want or I'm looking for lifetime keepers, I know that any watch I may end up with, probably could be put up for sale one day to fund another purchase. Because, like you guys, I've got the sickness. Therefore, when I'm looking for a watch to complement the Black Bay 58 that I did buy about a month ago, I know I wanted something on the dressy/sporty side so I can look like a straight up baller as I work in my home office in the sweatpants I slept in the night before. These things are important because of reasons. Some of the contenders were, half the Tudor line, like the Royal in 38mm, the Black Bay 36, and also the Tudor Prince Date 36mm, which looks just like a Rolex Datejust. Now here's the problem with the Tudors. They go from anywhere, 2,000 on the low end, 2,300 pre-owned on eBay for like the Black Bay 36. New Royals can be 2,700 around there. And again, you can get the Prince date for about the same as the Black Bay 36. Now, as far as the Royals go, I haven't seen many pre-owned going for any less on eBay, and I'm assuming that's just because the line is so new, and I don't think it's really a popular one right now. I know a lot of people don't really like the design. So basically, when I'm looking at those, I'm looking at spending that much for a watch with an ETA movement. The Tudor Prince has a press clasp, which for that price, you're not getting value for money. Also, that's an expensive homage to a Rolex Datejust, and literally no one's going to ask me about that in the wild, but it was still a concern. I wasn't sold on the bezel on the Royal, which is a combination of fluted and flat. Now, if I could get the Black Bay 36 for right under 2,000 on a bracelet, I think that would be a decent deal, but then I also have the same face and hands essentially as that are on the 58, so where's the variety in that? Although I still do kind of want one. I also thought about an Aquaterra and 38mm. I had the 41mm Aquaterra, and they're nice, but I will say that the hour hand and minute hands were kind of similar in length and size and shape, and I remember it being sort of hard to read in low light. Also, the ones that were in the price range I'm wanting to spend can be anywhere from 10 to 15 years old, and I thought that was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow when considering my worry for having to possibly service a movement that old. Also, I'd prefer to purchase from a private seller than a lot of the pre-owned, quote-unquote stores that have them on eBay, which they usually sell them polished and naked, which means no box or papers. And I love having my box and papers for resale and also just for personal peace of mind, even though you can make the argument that they don't really mean anything because they can be bought, secondhand as well. Also, having the 41mm Aquaterra, I wasn't a fan of the polished center links on the bracelet. They get scratched up real easily, and the AR coating on the top of the sapphire crystal. So I was always worried about scratching it, and I also got smudged easily where every time I checked the time, I had to wipe off the top of the watch. So I narrowed it down to Grand Seiko. I was really interested in models like the SBGA001, but it has the old double branding where it says Seiko under the 12 o'clock, and damn it, if I'm spending thousands on a Seiko, then Grand Seiko should be the name that sticks out the most. So that was kind of out of the window. Also thought about the SBGR053 because it's 37 millimeters, but it's also not a spring drive and also double branded. Also, it's a little over 13 millimeters thick, which is approaching the 14 millimeter case thickness that I had on the Tudor Heritage that I got rid of. Anyways, before I close out, here's a little wrist shot. I've got a bang on 7-inch wrist. I was able to size this bracelet up pretty nicely. You can see kind of down the barrel the thickness. One of the things that I would prefer is that it be thinner. That's one of the reasons I like the Tudor, like the Black Bay 58 and the 36 are about 10 millimeters. But with the way that the lugs curve down, it does fit the wrist nicely. Again, there's a little wrist roll. See the clasp. So yeah, and that's one of the reasons I sold that Black Bay 41. The thickness, and also it was really, really heavy. So like at the end of the day, after wearing it, really look forward to taking it off. Whereas with this, I haven't had that issue. So there it is, SBGA283, and like I said, you got some of the dimensions, some crappy shots of it from my cell phone, but one of the main things that I wanted to address, which I think, I understand my videos are crappy and I'm just kind of like freeballing it here, and I'm not one of those YouTube professionals, but I think the reasons that we are drawn to certain watches and why we buy them is also important to discuss, which a lot of the times I don't think a lot of channels do. So Anyways, I hope you liked my little review of this watch, the reasons why I got it, some of the other watches I looked at, and how I ended up with this one. By the way, here's the case back. You'll notice that this one does not have the display case back, which actually keeps the thickness down on this. So anyways, that's it, guys.